Hello, everybody. Hello. If I could have more quiet, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure that people on Zoom can hear me. Could someone on Zoom tell me if you can hear me? Could someone unmute on Zoom and tell me if you can hear me?
I can hear you, Joanna. This is Todd Curry.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So, recording is in progress. Sorry for these technical. Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Joanna Sharp, the chair of the Energy Committee, and thank you all for coming out on this surprisingly snowy night. I'm very glad to see you, and we also have a school board meeting going on, which we didn't plan on, but so I'm glad to see you all there, here. I have a few minutes of remarks, and then I'll introduce our presenter. The Cornish Energy was formed by a unanimous vote on Article 38 at town meeting in 2007, and given the mission to help Cornish save energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We on the Energy Committee believe that community power, which is the topic of today's public hearing, will be significantly beneficial to our town and will help to facilitate both our clean energy goals while at the same time providing competitive energy pricing for our residents. The Energy Committee has been following the progress of community power since 2019, when New Hampshire legislators saw that it was in the public interest to make it easier for municipalities to become the purchasers of electricity for their residents, and amended New Hampshire law RSA 53E to allow towns to create opt-out aggregator programs. If I'm using any terms that you don't understand, please be assured that we will explain all of this in greater detail later. A very successful model for community power is the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, or CPCNH. Since its inception in 2021, its membership has grown to include 63 New Hampshire towns and 4 counties, and over the past 3 years, it has consistently delivered lower supply electricity prices to its member towns. We have a representative here from CPCNH, Henry Herndon, who is the Director of Member Services. He's extremely knowledgeable on this topic. I think you were the main catalyzer idea. And he will be explaining the whole concept of community power to you shortly. As we have indicated in our flyer and in the post in Connect Cornish, this is a matter that will be voted on at town meeting in March 2025. There is a lengthy document called the Community Power Plan that contains the governing principles behind the program and that would guide the town if it votes to adopt community power. Both the Energy Committee and the Select Board have carefully and thoughtfully reviewed this plan and approve of its contents. The vote at town meeting would be to adopt the Community Power Plan and to authorize the Select Board to implement that plan. I'm going to repeat that because this is important to understand. What we'll actually be voting on at town meeting is to adopt the plan and authorize the Select Board to implement the plan. The plan itself gives the Select Board 2 implementation options. So it would be the Select Board that would choose one of those 2 options. A, to partner with CPCNH, or B, to hire a commercial broker. The Energy Committee voted unanimously to recommend to the Select Board that we partner with CPCNH, and I can go into the reasons for that later. Whether we choose to use a commercial broker or partner with CPC&H, all of the governing principles are the same and are contained in the same plan. This is a big decision for the town, and the goal of the Energy Committee through these public hearings and other resources is to provide the best information we can to facilitate the townspeople in making an informed decision at town meeting. On that note, I want to remind everyone that there is a webpage on the town website called Community Power Information, which contains a wealth of information, including a copy of that long plan, a brief summary of the plan. The plan is about 47 pages long, and we have like a 3-page summary, a draft of the proposed warrant article, and frequently asked questions. That webpage is being continuously updated. I hope you will avail yourselves of this resource over the next few months before town meeting. I want to thank Heidi Jarsma for all her technical help in setting up that webpage. In addition, I want to thank Heidi Jarsma. In addition, if you ever have any questions between now and town meeting, please feel free to email me. My email address is available in our Connect Cornish postings on the Energy Committee webpage, and I'd be happy to give it to you directly. I would like to thank the Select Board for all the time and thought they have put into this issue. We have not all been in agreement on everything about community power, but I know that each Select Board member has only the best interests of the town in mind in all their decisions, not just about this, and I truly appreciate all the unrecognized and thankless time, energy, and concern they give to this town. I'd also like to thank my Energy Committee members, past and present, for all their hard work on this. And I'm very grateful to CPC&H and all its representatives who have put in countless hours to help us understand all the facets that go into community power and who have been extremely patient with all our inquiries. I would now like to turn the meeting over to Henry Herndon, who will explain what community power is, what it would mean for Cornish to adopt it, and also he will tell us more about CPC&H, the organization he works for. Henry will talk for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open the meeting for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Just a slight modification that I welcome comments or questions as I move through the material. So there's a good amount of slides and prepared material, and I think we'll cover everything, but please chime in, or if you have questions or comments, and we can maybe make this conversational if that's appropriate. And just very good to see the full room. This is great. I've done a lot of these public hearings, and sometimes nobody comes, and it's nice to see engagement and all the good work the committee's done to create some great educational material. Hold on. And sure, with that, I'll sort of, so before we even moving off of this, actually, I'll just note this is a photo from our organization's annual membership meeting. Community Power Coalition New Hampshire is a nonprofit. We are created by New Hampshire cities and towns. We're governed by those towns through our membership of the cities and towns. This is a photo of that membership. The members elect the board. Our board is made up of city councilors and folks from select boards and folks from energy committees. Evan Oxenham is here from the town of Plainfield, who has been on our board since inception, serves on the executive committee from Plainfield. So just want to sort of note that we really are member focused as a nonprofit and really aim to serve the cities and towns that we work. So what is community power? This was briefly described, but the town of Cornish and other towns, cities, and counties in the state can become what's called the default electricity provider or supplier. And what that means is essentially a group purchasing of electricity for electric accounts within the town. And you can achieve an economy of scale through that. You can also partner with other towns through the coalition to have greater buying power. Importantly, the utility companies, Eversource, Liberty, and the electric co-op, they're always going to own the grid. They're going to deliver that electricity to the customer. They're going to send the customer the bill. What would change from the customer perspective is the portion of that bill associated with power supply, the actual generation of power, that is now purchased by Cornish Community Power or the coalition. And can result in lower rates and other energy choices for participating customers. Joanna mentioned the RSA 53E, so that's there. A couple other important notes: these are voluntary programs. No customer has to participate. Anyone can opt out at any point in time, but it is the new default, meaning that if you go through a town meeting and an approval and the select board enters into contracts and launches the program, customers will receive a letter notifying them of the program, and 30 days after that letter, customers will be automatically enrolled into Cornish Community Power if they take no action. So that's what that part means. And then again, any customer, no one has to participate. Anybody can choose to buy power from their utility or from any other provider at any. Another important point is that there are no tax monies allowed to fund the program. It's funded by the customer electric bill payment. Pays for the cost of it. But some benefits, the legislature is really thinking about local control. How do we have cities and towns have more of a say in some of their energy decisions? Lowering costs. We'll eventually get to the rates. Some communities have clean energy goals. There are ways where this can potentially give a customer more clean energy choices, or perhaps a community as a whole, should they choose to. And there's other sort of innovative potential of these programs. Some of the more advanced states are using these programs to develop solar storage, other renewable energy projects, and really integrate things like electric vehicle charging or home batteries or any technology really in a smarter way. So there's potential for that sort of longer term. So some key points if and when a program launches. I mentioned this, but customers will be enrolled into the program. The program will only launch if the rate at launch is lower than the prevailing utility supply rate. I mentioned that the program is voluntary. The utilities will deliver the power. Does anyone here buy power from somebody other than their utility, a third party, Constellation or Direct Energy, or nobody? Well, you can. It's an option. You can go on a website and shop around for different rates for electric providers. Some people do that. This program will not affect people who have already done. Yes, please. If you have solar panels, you would not immediately be enrolled in the program. You would just remain on your existing net metering program with whichever utility you're with. I can speak more to that as well. That's actually, let me say sort of, it's a bug, not a feature. It's the intention of the law and the rules and people who put together these programs was to buy power from folks like you who have solar on your roof. And that would be like one mini power plant in our portfolio of resources we're buying power from. There's a lot of benefits to that. There are some technical challenges with the way utilities share data and through the accounting side of things that are preventing that presently. So there's some regulatory procedures and perhaps legislation required to sort of fix this problem where we're not able to source power from the solar customers and credit them or pay them for that power. Does that answer your question?
If I could add, but the expectation is that in the near future, that will be resolved.
I think it'll be it's a top priority for our organization. We're working very hard through sort of the regulatory channels. That's been slow going. There's another legislative session coming up. But yes, it's a big priority and we will fix it.
And is it not true that once Cornish NH can start offering net metering, that you may have a better net metering plan than utilities offer?
I can say that it would be equivalent at least. And then again, what we'd like to get to is time of use options, which would then help incentivize batteries with the solar, things like that. But I would say for net metering, which sort of, we'd like to do essentially what the utilities do, crediting for your extra power that you put on the grid. I'll just go a little further here. So do you, on a monthly basis, generate more power from your solar than your house consumes? It's about even. So if you are drawing more power from the grid than you are putting back onto the grid in any given month, come on in, enroll in the program, opt into the program, you can participate. It's only if on a monthly basis you're exporting a net amount to get a credit for, that's the issue. We're unable to credit you for your excess power. Yes.
I have solar on my roof, I had it since 2013, and I love it. And all summer long, from roughly May until September, and sometimes pretty well into October, I generate more than I use. So then I have the net metering, and I have Liberty. I got a bill the other day, and just the figures, they said I had 785 bank powers, whatever they call it.
Sure.
They charged me for 8, and I still had 740 left. Why are they charging me when I still have a net balance? They can't tell me. And they do not or cannot tell me how much I actually make.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense. How can they send me a bill?
I shouldn't take bets on how long it would take to get to the utility or Liberty, not utility. Really, I think Liberty is having a lot of challenges right now in some of their systems. I can't speak to that.
Well, I mean, their arguments just don't make sense. But they're good about, I'm right on 120, and the main line goes right by my house, so I have no complaints with that. I just don't understand the billing.
That's all on the Liberty side of things, and I can't.
Okay.
Just for our Zoom audience, the question was, a homeowner has solar and the Liberty is not giving them apparently the net metering they are due. So we were just discussing that.
So I got a question along those lines. There's 3 utilities in Cornish. You launch if your rates are lower than all 3, or what happens if in some cases, New Hampshire Electric Cooperative is close. If in one interval, it happens to be the next interval where you're launching here, how would that work? If you need all 3 to be higher, or if New Hampshire Electric was not, would those customers be exempted from the launch, or how does that work?
So we have language that I believe is in the plan, and we could double check this, that makes clear that the program would launch for those customers in utilities where the price beats the utility. So let's say the electric co-op had a lower rate than the community power rate, but Eversource had a higher rate. The program would launch for the Eversource customers, but not for the co-op customers. And I do want to actually, maybe we can make a note to just double check that in the plan, because that was sort of an innovation. We have different, we update and revise this template plan periodically, and that was an update. I want to make sure it's in there.
Okay.
Good question.
What happens over time? The rates for Liberty and the co-op change and evolve, and how would that impact the community power kind of going forward, where it's lower at one point or higher at one point, and then if the utility rates drop, do you go back? Do you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a slide on rates, and I want to answer that, and maybe I'll just wait till I get to that point. So if we could go on to the next. Oh, it's right here. Perfect. Look at that. So this is just illustrating the current rates for the current period, which are run August through January. So all the rates are going to change starting February 1st. So you'll get to see that before your town meeting, before you launch a program. And we'll know those rates at the end of this month. Utilities are sort of setting their rates this month, and we will also set rates. So currently, you can sort of see this is the basic option. The that community power offers, the 8.6, and here are the utility options down here. They're more in the 10 to 11 cent range, with the electric co-op again being very, very close, essentially the same rate as community power rates. And then the customers have these options for clean energy choices as well. For a customer, they can choose to opt in or out or choose their energy option by going to this website, communitypowernh.gov, or by calling our customer service phone number, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. And all you need is your utility account number. So we try to make that very easy for any customer to pick and choose their option. To your question and to this point, so utilities tend to set supply rates on 6-month intervals, August through January, February through July. Thus far, we have consistently outperformed the utilities. I will note that there is a modification to how utilities buy their electricity supply that is being sort of piloted over this next 6-month period. And we're monitoring that very closely. But essentially so what they have done traditionally is they lock in a fixed 6-month rate and price. That's sort of stable and fixed. And what they're doing this time is they're sort of locking in 50% to 70% while floating the remainder in the spot market, where prices sort of fluctuate. Which is a bit of a gamble. It's sort of essentially it's a shift of risk from the supplier who's selling that price onto the customers. So it could, if prices end up low in the market, that's good for the customers. The rate will stay low. If prices end up high in the market, then they'll have to go back to the customers and collect those higher spot market prices. So I'm not sure you can get a little more technical into the commodity market side of this, but essentially the takeaway is utilities are changing their method of buying power, and it will have some degree of impact, and we're going to see what happens there. You're in a good place because you are going to get to monitor that for this next 6-month period.
But Henry, I think what the community power plan says is that we would not launch unless the community power prices are lower than the utilities, but that's just for the launch. So after that, there is not that requirement. It's not stated in the plan that we have to beat the prices every time, but that is our goal. And I think one of the major benefits of community power is that it will definitely stabilize the prices. So you won't see, the real volatility that, we saw a couple of years ago when prices went up to 20% kilowatt hour. And that's because, and we can talk about this later, community power has a very substantial financial reserve.
Yeah, that's a key point. In the back and then here.
So if the power company rates went down or changed in such a way that they were less than community power, would we stop buying from community power, or would we start paying a higher rate for community power?
So there is.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, if the utility rate dropped below the community power rate at some point in the future, what would happen to the customer? So community power is the new default. So if that scenario occurred, which is possible, any customer on any monthly basis could choose to opt out of the program, but there would not be sort of like an immediate dissolution of Cornish community power or something to that effect. That would not. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but a person would have to opt out proactively. It wouldn't happen unless they knew about it and they took that action. Is that correct?
That's correct. The person would have to proactively opt out in that scenario. Yes.
I'm trying to understand the benefit a little bit better. So you're saying that CPC New Hampshire can buy power at a lower price because it has more people to buy power for. But the utilities have for the most part, their whole population. And how could you do it cheaper? Because, the administration costs of CPC in New Hampshire has to be paid by the people who are buying power from you. So it just seems to me, you couldn't really, why would CPC NH, be able to have a lower rate?
Should I repeat the question, or you think, or can folks hear?
I don't know, maybe just, can you summarize it?
Yeah, I think the question is, how can CPC&H compete or outperform on rates relative to the utilities because they have equivalent buying power comparable?
They have
Scale.
more people, right?
Yeah.
More electricity.
So the scale is sort of one part of the equation. The other and perhaps more important part of the equation is the method. So the utilities, they have, up to this point, been regulated in such a way where they have to lock in 6 months of power at fixed points in time. So in December, they lock in the February through July power. And in June, they lock in the August through January power. And that's sort of one way to purchase power in the commodity market. And we do something a little bit different, which gives us a competitive advantage. We actively participate in that market sort of in an ongoing basis, rather than just twice a year locking it in. We manage a portfolio where day to day, week to week, month to month, we're monitoring the market, we're purchasing blocks of power. We have this portfolio of some short, some medium, some longer term contracts. We have this more active approach to portfolio management, which has proven to be an advantage, a way where we can be more competitive than they could be. So that's, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Are we subject to the regulations that they are?
We are not. So our rates are set by our board of directors. So our board of, the member towns, select boards, folks like that, our CEO will present rates and we say, we have a revenue requirement. We need to have this much revenue to cover our cost of power, cover our operating costs, and to cover our reserve accrual. So if you're a for-profit company, you have like a profit margin. We're a nonprofit, we have a net margin that goes to our reserves. So we do accrue money and deposit it into financial reserve so we can have sort of a healthy financial stability as we buy power in this market and as we sell power to customers over time. So those are our costs. We have to set a rate to cover those costs. And our board sort of has this trade-off decision: how much money can we save the customer by lowering the rate today versus how much is it prudent to deposit into that financial reserve so we can make sure we can save the customer tomorrow, or be around for the longer term, get a credit rating. So I'm sorry, I forgot the question, but I've gone off.
Yeah, the question was, is CPC&H subject to regulations?
Oh, the point being that we're sort of self-regulated by our member towns and our board and the policies that govern how we set rates and accrue reserves and manage energy risk.
But the New Hampshire law, RSA 53 has some
There are
legal requirements that we have to
yes.
abide by.
There are some legal requirements that you have to abide by in developing a plan, and then there are some administrative rules that govern how we work with the utility. We have a working relationship where they will share, data about the customers and their load, so we can know how much power to buy, and we can send the letters to notify customers. There's other sort of working relationship regulations with the utilities, but they don't regulate our rates. We set our own rates.
So, if I understand correctly, you're taking advantage, this program takes advantage of the fact that the utility commission forces the supplier to set rates over a 6-month period. But you don't have to. That's really what, this is a
Part of it, yeah.
well, that's the biggest part.
Well, that is a big part of the rate advantage, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You may have said this and I kind of missed it, but who bills us? Do you bill us or does the utility still bill us?
The utility will bill the customers, and where it says supply charge, there will be a line item that will read Cornish Community Power once the program is up and running, instead of Liberty Utilities Default Energy or whatever it says. Yes, ma'am.
And we will still pay the delivery of the delivery charge.
you will still pay all of the delivery charges to your utility company.
You see, is there a scenario where the utility company will say, well, wait a minute, you're not getting the money with that, we don't want to deliver the electricity.
That's a good question. So the question is the utility gonna lose out on its money that it would have made from the energy supply charges? The answer is no. Utility doesn't earn any profit off of the supply charge part of the bill. All of their profit comes from the delivery charges. What they're doing on the supply side is they're just, every 6 months, they put out a bid, they pick the lowest bidder on the rate, and they pass through that cost. So there's no financial loss to the utility on the supply side of it.
Are there two bills?
There's one bill, and it will be in two parts, and it will have a delivery part, and that's what pays the utility for the poles and wires. And there's a supply part, and that's what pays whoever they're buying supply from, or if it's Cornish Community Power, that's the money that pays for Cornish.
There's some slides that.
Yeah.
No, go ahead with your question. I just want to say that we have some slides about.
If I have
how bills-
Eversource, do I still pay?
If you have Eversource, you would pay your bill to Eversource, and Eversource then sort of remits the supply charge payment to whoever the supplier is, and in this case, it would be Cornish Community Power or CPC NH.
So they don't make any money on their supply, and if you take away the portion of their business so they make a profit, the more of your business increases, the less profit they make. Is that correct?
No, their profit remains unchanged because their profit is entirely from the delivery charges on the bill and has no relation to the supply charges. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have the solar, and like I said, approximately 6 months of the year, I generate more than I use. I could opt out of this for that 6 months and sign on for the 6 months that I would probably use them.
The question is, if I have solar and for 6 months of the year, I'm selling power into the grid, and for 6 months of the year, I'm drawing power from the grid, can I opt in and out as I choose? Yes, you can come in and out on a monthly basis as much as you like. So you could stay with the utility when you're in summer months and you're creating an excess, and then you can come to community power on a cheaper rate if it's a cheaper rate in the winter months.
Sorry, just to add something about the opting out any month by month. You can opt out at any point, by calling the phone number or doing it online, but it won't take effect until the next billing. Just so people are clear.
That's a good point. Yeah, so you can opt out anytime you want, effective your next monthly bill cycle. Yeah. And I think that I do want to sort of move through, I know there'll be more comments and questions, and I encourage that. I just want to make sure we cover some of the other content. So this is an example of this is about the notification and enrollment process. So let's say you go through town meeting and the town decides and the select board decides to implement a program. What would happen is we would mail a letter to every single electric account in town that would say all the information they would need to know. Welcome to Cornish Community Power. Here is our rate. Here's how it compares to your utilities rate. Here are the options. Here are the details I've been describing in this conversation. And if you want to opt out or opt in, here's the phone number and the communitypowernh.gov website and those kinds of details. So that would be the notification process. I'm not sure if there are questions about that.
Well, if you have solar, you would have to then opt out.
No, a good question. If you have solar, do you have to opt out? So this letter will say, if you have solar, we'd like to serve you, but unfortunately we can't for technical issues right now. Stay tuned. You will remain on your current plan and program. Same.
You will know that I have solar?
We will. The utility will sort of flag those customers. There are a very rare de minimis number of instances where we have an inadvertent enrollment, where the utility maybe missed a flag on a customer that recently got solar and we didn't know they had solar and we switched them in. We found out a month or two later. And in that case, we just correct the error. And if there was a loss of a credit, they would receive a reimbursement for that. But that's a very small number. Next slide. This is just an example of the bill that I mentioned where this on an Eversource bill, this is the one area that would change the Peterborough community code here. maybe find a shorter example where they don't cut off a character limit, but
Does everybody understand what the supply portion of your bill means versus the delivery portion of your bill? There, maybe you could explain that real quick.
I mean, yeah, I'll try to briefly, but New Hampshire actually sort of led the nation in this utility restructuring in the 90s. So we sort of, the public service company in New Hampshire at the time was going bankrupt on Seabrook nuclear power station and sort of trying to stick the cost on the ratepayers, and the legislature said, no, thank you. And essentially there was this theory that has now played out in practice that it makes more sense to have competition in the generation of power rather than monopoly. So it makes sense to have a monopoly that owns the whole poles and wires, so you don't have all these competing poles and wires companies running down the street. But if you have competition in the generation of power, you will have more choices and lower cost for customers, or greater efficiency than if you have a monopoly or a vertically integrated monopoly. So anyway, New Hampshire in the 90s sort of broke ground for the country in doing that, breaking the monopoly and creating this competitive power market. And that's why the utilities are just poles and wires companies now, and we have choices on who we shop for power from, and there's all these different competing generators and suppliers in a marketplace, which creates efficiency for the customer.
Does anyone, I just want to add that you can see, if you look at your electric bill, it's separated out into supplier, the supply cost, which is just straight, how many kilowatt hours you use, and the price per kilowatt hour. That's just straightforward. And then there's all these other charges, the transmission, the distribution, the stranded costs, the system benefits. Those are under delivery. And what community power would be doing is only dealing with the supply part. We would be purchasing the actual kilowatts. Well, I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, the electricity generation, the who's generating the power. Whereas these are not the actual generation of power. This is distribution, regulatory charges, the transmission, which is interstate, the federally regulated interstate lines, whereas the distribution is the inside of the state regulated. Stranded costs are whatever utilities are putting in stranded costs. System benefits, this is funding our energy efficiency. So you might know NH saves, and there's money to support weatherization of buildings and LED lighting upgrades. That comes from this charge on the bill. Some of those charges are larger or smaller, but that all stays the same. And that's all not actually the generation of electricity, that's the poles and wires or some that the utilities.
And all of this, that's where the utilities make their profit. The supply, as Henry said, they're just passing it through from who they buy it to you guys.
I just want to say there's a Subaru Outback Silver with its lights on. So that your battery goes as fast as my Subaru battery does, and it will not be able to start your car.
Someone's car has its lights on, that's what the big problem.
Distribution companies usually have a lot of different kinds of rates, right? Commercial, industrial, time of use, although this only applies to residential, sort of that one rate.
It's a good question. Does community power have rates for more residential or commercial, or who? And we have rates for residential and commercial customers. Particularly there's sort of mid-sized commercial customers. Some of those customers have a monthly variable rate, a rate that changes each month as prices actually change each month. We have those rates as well. We also actually have optional annual rates for non-residential customers. So particularly our municipal cities and towns, their municipal buildings and accounts, they were requesting, hey, for budgeting purposes, we'd love to have a 12-month rate. Can you give us that? We just developed that as an option for them. So we could develop other innovative rates over time. We'd like to get into time of use. We can't right now just because of sort of some of the utility control of data and whatnot. Next slide. Oh, here's a Liberty example. So if you have Liberty, similar thing, it will look a little different. In this case, those delivery charges are on top. There's similar distribution, stranded cost, transmission, system benefit. It's the same types of charges, but Liberty's versions of them. And then there's the supply charge portion here. And this is what we're talking about for Cornish Community Power.
Question, if the co-op and Liberty and all of the, electric companies use delivery as, or the generation as just a pass-through, why aren't they all the same?
That's a good question. I mean, the state
Well,
could.
what's the-
The question is, if the different utility companies just pass through the supply charge, why aren't the supply charges all the same? That's a good question. It's because the way it works now is the regulators tell Liberty, you do your bid, Eversource, you do your bid, Unitil, you do your bid. And I mean, they may have different costs for their customers. You know, if you have large customers that consume power in these types of patterns versus small customers and those types of patterns, that can change the cost profile. That could be it. It's a good question because, I mean, you could imagine, well, why wouldn't the state just do one bid for all the customers instead of having each utility? That might be a better way. So it doesn't necessarily make the best sense. I think that's why they're tinkering with it. We don't know if it's necessarily the smartest way that they're tinkering with it, but they just do it different. They each do their own bid. So process-wise, the town of Cornish has joined the Community Power Coalition in New Hampshire as a member by adopting our joint powers agreement, which is just essentially our nonprofit's corporate charter that lays out our rules. And they've established a committee to develop a plan as per the state law requires. The committee has developed that plan and conducted research and is now in the process of holding public hearings before the town meeting where you would adopt the warrant article, say we approve of this, and the select board has our blessing to go forth and do it. And that would be the final step, is the select board would then approve contracts that actually commit the town to launching the program.
Just wanted to add, so when the select board, the first step, when the select board voted to join CPC&H, that's a non-binding agreement, and it was done so that we could reap the resources of CPC&H, which we are getting, even though we're not we haven't signed all the cost-sharing agreements or anything for that.
So the first organization has a number of towns already that are members, right?
Yeah, I think we'll have a graphic of that coming up. Yes.
So does that mean that everybody in all the towns that are members bill the same rate?
At present, yes, we do charge the same set of rates you saw on that previous slide to the customers in different towns, customers with different utilities. It is possible that we could have rates differentiate between towns in the future should a town choose to buy power from a particular project, particular power generator, whereas another town might not choose to do that. That is an option. So we have this flexibility where different towns could choose to buy from different sources. We haven't implemented that yet, but it could happen.
Oh, could we go back to the prices charged? Did we talk about the other options, the renewable energy options?
I think I just briefly mentioned it, but I could say more. Just that a customer could choose to opt up to 100% clean power if they would choose, and then they would be purchasing renewable certificates from local renewable power plants
Or a higher rate?
for a higher rate.
Is that what you meant? Like some towns could choose a certain source of electricity?
So there's actually sort of two pieces of this. Some towns have chosen this Granite Plus, Plainfield, for example, as the default, in, pursuance of their renewable energy goals. So that's what the default is for customers, and then they can choose for the other options. This is one approach. I'm talking about something that's perhaps a little different, which is a contract to agree to buy power from a specific new or existing generator. So we have designed these agreements to allow for that. So if a town wanted to do a contract with this developer to build that solar project, to buy that power, to say, fill 10% of its portfolio or something like that, there are pathways to do that. We have not implemented that as of yet, but some towns are motivated by building more local renewable or other projects. And there are avenues to do that.
Well, right now, every member town of CPC NH gets the same rate. And the same way you can opt out of the program altogether, you can opt up to different renewable levels or opt down, anytime you want.
So that's on an individual customer basis. not on-
Individual, yes.
Yes. No worries. Let's see. So yeah, a little more about the plan on if we go to the next slide, and then the next slide. So the plan, I believe, is it available on the webpage?
Yes.
Mentioned, so that's good. And it sounds long, but I think it's really like 18 or 19 pages. And then there are attachments that some of them are required by the regulators, and that's extra. But really, it's like a 19-page plan. And then, so the select board established a committee to develop a plan. It has the details of how the program will operate and comply with state law. And then we're having the 2 public hearings. Next slide. This is just a summary. So again, the first is the less than 20 pages is just the intro, the overview, the goals, objectives, and the legal requirements. This is mostly just sort of what we just discussed. They were these detail. What is the program? And then there are some appendices that have some more detail. It lays out the goals of the program, governance, the noticing, which I discussed, the options. There's certain, basic legal requirements that all power suppliers have to have some environmental metrics that they comply with, things of that nature. It discusses this net metering question. And here's a key point. Some customers are on an electric assistance program, which is income qualified discounts to your electric bills, your certain income thresholds, and you can maintain that discount and participate. So that's clear. So,
Is Lebanon in it? Lebanon is it?
yes, the city of Lebanon they were a founding member.
And so if you move to Lebanon, then you're automatically, because it's the default for Lebanon.
Yep.
So you don't need to opt in as a new person, you're automatically on it.
If you move to another town that has this, you need to opt in. You don't need to. There's a process where after a month or 2 or 3, the utility will let us know, and we'll mail you a letter, and we'll switch you in. You might be if you go ahead and opt in, you might be faster. You might get in faster, just because there's this sort of arduous process we have to go through the utility to.
And how can you tell from the electric bill from Liberty, for example?
You can. It's not as clear on Liberty's bill, but there's a part of. If you go back to that Liberty bill, I'll show you. It says over here, this little paragraph, which they don't really let us write. They wrote it for us. We'd love to work with them to sort of do more customization, but there's a little paragraph about community power on the bill there. Whereas the Eversource bill, it will literally say Cornish community power or Cornish community power there. So different utilities, different approaches.
Since CPC New Hampshire is a supplier of electricity and customers now have the ability to go to suppliers. Can an individual already go to CPCNH without having,
Only if they are in a town or county that has implemented a program. So we cannot sell power to customers. We're a little bit of a different creature in that way, where we can't just sell power to any old customer in any old town. We specifically provide community power service to towns that have implemented community power.
Can I just add something? Under the plan does not, this is what I was talking about in my introductory remarks. The plan doesn't commit the town to any course of action. In other words, it leaves it up to the select board to make the decisions about how to implement community power. And then I just want to reiterate this, that it does not impose any financial burden on the town.
Just as you just said that it's up to the select board to decide to join or not join.
Sorry. Sorry, to be clear. So what we're voting on at town meeting is to whether the town wants to adopt the plan and authorize the select board to implement the plan. So we are saying at that vote that the town does want community power, but we are authorizing the select board to implement.
And is the board then committed to keep it that way unless the town decides that they don't want to do it? And if the town decided they didn't want to do it down the road, then somebody would have to bring a petition to the town meeting and they have to get voted again, kind of thing. That ever happen?
So the question is, if whatever the decision the select board makes, is that binding as we go forward? The select board is accessible to customers to talk to them about their decisions, but I assume once we choose, so the basic decision that the select board needs to make is whether to go with CPCNH or is someone on Zoom? You need to mute your microphone. Yeah, Craig Pike, could you please mute your microphone?
Yes, sorry.
No problem. Sorry, where was I?
The two options for the town.
Okay, so that would be the main decision that the select board would make. And I, I trust the select board to stick to their decisions if they change something, especially if they decide to. We can't exit from, once we adopt the agreement, it would take a town meeting vote to exit from it. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And then this is just a little more about the Power Coalition CPC of New Hampshire. So this is just showing where we operate in the state. The communities in blue are operating community power, meaning their customers, their default is their community power program. They're buying electricity from community power. The communities in green, including Cornish, I believe, right, is they're in the planning stage. So this sort of pre-town meeting or not yet launched stage. And then those yellow communities, we have county members. There are counties that can adopt programs. Sullivan County is in process of developing a program. And Cheshire and Merrimack County both operate programs for some of their towns. Yeah, it's actually more like 190,000 customers currently in the state. And there's been good savings for those customers since we have launched. And yeah, we can go to the next slide.
That's wave four.
Wave four is, yeah, we should make that less jargony. Wave four just is our terminology for the most recent wave of communities that have launched, and there were about 20 towns in October that launched, and they're the ones highlighted in red that just came online in October. This is our board of directors, which I've talked about a little bit. And so we're sort of really, we think of ourselves as having this combination of community governance with expert staff operations. So we do have a growing staff team of 7 to 9 staff right now, and we'll be up to maybe a dozen next year. And we're supported by some vendor partners to, manage the electricity procurement, to provide customer service and other aspects of the organization. Next slide.
Would Cornish get someone on the board if we opted into?
No, but being a member, you can put somebody forward for the board. And we have
Evans there.
we have an April annual meeting, so there will be 1/3 of our 20 or 21 member board will be up for election every year in April. So it's an option. It's not a guarantee, but we do. So this is a good point. Thank you. So we have 7 committees. They're listed there. And those are made up of our member towns. You don't have to sit on the board to sit on a committee. So, our finance committee develops our budget, recommends it to the board. And that committee is made up of our member towns, a regulatory and legislative affairs committee, a risk management committee that's really monitoring our electricity purchasing, member engagement committee, audit, governance. So we certainly invite, we're also subject to the same right to know law that any government or town is subject to. So all of our meetings are publicly noticed, open to the public. Feel free to come and sit in on them. If you want to go to our website and look at our calendar.
Maybe if I can just add that Cornish will have 2 representatives, 2 member reps, actually member rep and alternate. And you can certainly go to any meeting as a rep. In fact, any member of the public can also attend any meeting that CPC has, that you will have another rep and alternate member rep representing the town.
Yes, and we also send all of our board material to all of those member reps. So even if they're not on the board, they will receive the board packet, the meeting agenda, the meeting materials, the reports from the committees that are all in that.
And we get a vote at the annual meeting.
That's right. And at the annual meeting, there's the election of the board and other business. Some things like we have a policy charter or a regulatory and legislative affairs charter that says these are the kinds of policies our organization supports. That's not a staff decision. It's not a board decision. That's something all of the members have to agree to. So we know we have consensus across all the towns when we're taking positions at the state house or the regulator. Yes.
Are you able to compute what the average savings might have been over the last 5 years or whatever?
We know exactly what it was. So we've saved, I think it's between $14 and $18 million for the customer base since we've been in operation. And we could tell you per utility, it's maybe 15%, 20% in some cases, typically, with varying degrees. One EverSource rate period, it was very slim margins. Where the other ones, it was closer to 15 to 20%. And for a typical customer, that's maybe 10, 20 bucks a month, or maybe 50 bucks over a rate period, or 100, 200 bucks a year.
It sounds like it goes to the select board, and they contribute to a member of the community power stuff we have here, or what's going to be?
So there are commercial brokers, and they can provide service, and they operate a couple of, or they don't operate, but they have sort of played middleman for a couple of programs in the state, essentially where you would sign up for a 3-year price. And this, I don't know if there's the rate slide in here, that might be.
The one up
Above with the line chart?
Oh.
No, it's not in here. Anyway, there's another model where a commercial broker could help you sign a 2 or 3 year fixed price contract with a private supplier. That's a little different in that, you know, we can adjust the rates the way as the utility rates change. That's one difference.
Did the energy committee advise the select board?
If I could just pipe in here, yes. So right now, no commercial broker has approached the town. So there is no commercial broker that we could choose to go to right at this point. The energy committee voted unanimously to recommend to the select board that we go with CPC&H. And the basic reasons for that are, a commercial broker is a for-profit enterprise. They are not local. Usually they have a customer base that is probably nationwide, so they're not really focused on local needs. And they basically, we would have to commit to a contract period, whereas with CPC&H, that is not the case. CPC&H is really interested in not just offering stable and lower prices for electricity, but doing things that will benefit the community. With a commercial broker, we would not be able to, they would offer those, they could offer, you know, renewable percentage options, but not the idea of cooperating with other towns on a solar installation or offering time of use rates or other energy efficiency incentives. And CPC&H is doing some really great things and leading the way in and influencing even the way things are done for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So we recommended to the select board to take that route, and my sense is that they hear our recommendation and will listen to it. And I think it makes the most sense. And just to explain a little more, you see these are the companies that CPC&H has hired to help with all the, maybe you can explain it better, you know, what they do. But even though they're hired and we have staff members they have staff members who are overworked and they'll be getting more, even with all that overhead, CPC&H has come up with prices that are consistently lower. And a portion of the rates pay for their overhead, but not for profit. Sorry, what was the?
I think that, well, yeah, there's a couple, maybe there's 1, 2. Do you have a question?
You're essentially buying on the stock market.
We are, but we're hedging. So we are locking in forward contracts for power.
Sure.
But yes, we are buying on spot market. So we have a policy, it's a risk management policy that says we have to hedge or close fixed futures contracts before we sort of get into any given month. There's sort of parameters around ensuring that we're not at any given time exposed to real-time prices, but we're closing next month's power buys or the next 3 months or the next 6 months, certain percent.
Okay, my question is, towns that have voted it down, what have you faced with as far as opposition to this? Have there been towns that have voted it down? And why?
Yeah.
So we need something Counter that.
Have there been towns that have voted this down and why? And if we go to that map, a slide back, I think there was, of all those, 60+ towns, maybe there was one that I know of one that did not pass town meeting, and I think that was more a result of perhaps there not being coordination with the committee and the select board, whereas it seems like there's very good communication in Cornish between the committee and the select board, which I think is a good thing. And I don't think that in this one instance, there was, the committee and the select board weren't on the same page. They weren't communicating. They didn't share sort of a common understanding necessarily. So that was perhaps the reason there. Another thing I'll just mention, some folks are opposed to opt-out programs or sort of changing the default. So that's one thing. And I mean, one way to maybe talk about that or think about it, again, it's voluntary, so no one has to participate in this, but everybody is in an opt-out right now. If you're with Eversource, you can opt out of Eversource. If you're with Liberty, you can opt out of Liberty. This is just changing from your investor and utility opt-out to a sort of community opt-out.
The options for opting out are easy. Make it pretty easy.
Yeah. We hope to make it frictionless. So a simple phone call, all you need is your utility account number. I will note that sometimes there is a primary name on an account and a secondary name, like a couple or husband and wife. And sometimes there is a little bit of friction if it's not the primary name. Our customer service reps are, they're trained to only accept the name that they get on the account. So anyway, there's like this minor, that happens occasionally, and we try to make it as smooth as possible, but so long as you're the name on the account and you have your account number, it should be as fast as possible.
Well, when we lived in Maryland, we were constantly bombarded with opt-out options, but we had no idea the track record of these companies. So when did you go to them for the electricity? So we stuck with the company that, was providing it. So with this, pretty straightforward.
The comment was that when this homeowner lived in another state, they were bombarded with offers to go with different third-party suppliers. And one of the things I want to say that happens to people who do go with those third-party offers is sometimes they don't realize that they're being offered a low rate to start with, but it can change, and people get blindsided with the rate when it does change.
Like Medicare Advantage plan. Subject to change without notice.
This seems very exciting and kind of a no-brainer, but I also can tell that Energy Committee has done a lot of work on this, so great that Select Board's on board. And then I'd like to hear from Evan how Plainfield is doing with this. How long have you been in the program?
We launched at the very beginning, which actually was April of last year. We've only been running since then. The first 10 towns have launched. And we've been saving money. People are very happy with the program. Some people have opted down, as Henry mentioned, we launched at a slightly higher level because we have this down commitment to get the 100% renewable energy by 2030, and this is one step in that direction. And some people have opted down from that. But our general opt-out, people opt in and opt out. We see activity every month. People coming for.
I don't know if the people on Zoom could hear that, but basically Plainfield has been saving its residents money, and a number they do have some movement of people opting out and opting in or opting down, because Plainfield automatically enrolls everyone at that one step up renewable level, so people can opt down to the default, the basic rate.
One other question along those lines. Do other brokers offer those options as well, or is that unique to CPC NH that you have the tiered structure that escalates the renewables?
Other brokers offer a similar tiered
So
structure.
that's not.
I just want to, add a few things. So the process, if the town votes at town meeting to adopt, community power, then what happens, we don't immediately launch. The select board would have to review and sign a few agreements. And then the first launching opportunity after that would be in June, if everything pans out correctly. So the town members, everybody would get a letter in the mail close to launching in June, if that's how things are gonna go. And everybody has, there will be another informational meeting, and people have the option to find out what they want to do. And so the basic principle of this is that most residents or certain groups of residents would be automatically enrolled in community power. Certain groups would be not automatically enrolled, like solar owners, potentially NHEC customers, and I can talk about that. But most people in town would be automatically enrolled, but we would explain how people can opt out if they don't. That's the voluntary part of it. Nobody is forced to stay with it if they don't want it, but they do have to take that small action of calling or going on the website and opting out. And I just want to explain. So one of the people or the companies that CPC&H hires is a service company that will be running the phones, right? That's right. And then CPC&H hires very smart people. Well, CPC&H has very smart people on the staff, and they hire really experienced, knowledgeable people in the energy market. So these people are thinking about this all the time, and as Henry said, you know, monitoring the market and doing all sorts of complicated things that I don't understand, but I know that they've hired the best people to do this.
We had a question about if Sullivan County becomes a member, how does that interact with what Cornish is doing or not doing? Can you explain a little more about that? What that interaction between a county member and a municipal member might be?
So essentially they would not conflict in any way. If Cornish implements a program, the law is actually very clear. It says the municipal program takes priority over a county program. So a county can't like impose anything if the town has done it. So yeah, they could just coexist essentially.
So if let's say Cornish didn't adopt,
Yes.
then no, Sullivan County would have a plan, and you would be able to opt in through the county.
Yes, this is a great point. So once Sullivan County implements a program, now any customer can opt in to that program if they'd like.
Thank you.
Yes.
One last point. Well, correct. So what I understand is that what we're doing is choosing a broker for our power, in this case, a nonprofit that has a benefit of not having to support a big financial burden being nonprofit. Therefore, we get your services for the cost of purchasing your services from you without any extra financial burden. And that's where the basic
I think that is accurate to say that we're a nonprofit. We're not out to, you know, make as much money as we can. We just want to cover our costs, which are the cost of power, the operating costs, so the overhead, and accrual of a certain amount of financial reserve for stability long term.
and presenting a focus on hopefully something that agrees with where we all want to go.
really, yeah, to serve the goals of the different, some towns have these goals, some towns have those goals, and we just, our purpose is to serve the goals.
Well, I read the online paper with my program rejected. That is the goal, to support future possible solar alternative energy and without as a goal, but obviously not to make corporate profit. So you should come in less than everybody else for those reasons. You're not trying to take care of some shareholders.
Oh,
You might have to increase your salary.
the comment, I don't know if I can summarize it that well, but, can you, Henry?
The comment, well, it's hard to summarize, you said it well, I don't wanna misstate it. I think just the gentleman's commenting on, I don't know, we're a nonprofit and we're not out to, you know, get us the highest profits we can get. Our purpose is just to cover our costs and to serve the customers and the towns.
Well, the store in Herndon, where they came from, they were bombarded all the time with, large, people who are obviously looking to capitalize on selling, energy to them. They weren't there for the purpose that your group outlined, the purpose. Your goal and focus seems to be towards benefiting us and certainly not yourself, but that's not your goal isn't to feed stockholders, your goal is to meet this goal.
Our goal is not to feed stockholders, our goal is to be a member service organization, serving members, yeah.
And by doing it that way, you hopefully save down reduce that profit, there's no profit.
And the decision makers are close to you, right? We have a board member in the room right now who makes decisions about our budget and our rates. So they are from the communities. And anyone can walk out at any time. That's right.
And along that line, CPC NH is totally transparent and accountable. We know they make their decisions and their policies. They're available on their website, and anybody can attend their meetings and hear their decisions. Maybe Henry, you could talk about your financial reserve and how that works.
So we have a policy that governs a couple different policies, how we set rates, how we buy power, and how we manage financial reserve. So that the net profit or the net revenue. And we have certain targets. So we want to achieve, after 3 years of operation, having 60 days of cash in the bank, cover 60 days of expenses, and after 5 years to have 120 days of cash in the bank to cover 120 days of expenses. There get to be pretty big numbers when you're managing essentially $100 million a year electricity buys. And the purpose of that is just stability for, lower our financing costs, make us good credit-worthy counterparties who we're buying power from. So there's a basic sort of financial reserve that benefits all the customers to make us stable. You want to talk about discretionary reserves? Or sure. So there, in addition, so we track that reserve so we know the portion of our reserve fund that is associated with each town. You can't withdraw or use that money, but if you were to dissolve your program, you would return that money to that portion to the town. In addition to that joint reserve, our policies allow for a discretionary reserve. Some towns have chosen to, instead of charging 8.6 cents, charge 8.8 cents, add a few fractions of a cent a kilowatt hour to the rate, charge the customer to approve it through a town discretionary reserve fund. So you take some of that money, have a fund for the town to invest in energy efficiency or other local energy projects. So that is something that we allow, that our policies allow for our members to do. That's a member by member decision. Here's an example, or Peterborough has applied a adder to their rate to get a Peterborough local energy fund. So that's an option. It's not a requirement. Most towns are not making use of that, but there are a small number that are.
Yeah,
I should apologize. I'm gonna put some drops in my eye. I had an eye surgery the other day, so just forgive me.
no problem, Amy. Yeah, the Energy Committee is not, we decided, you know, we're not gonna go in that direction at this point. It's always something we can think about. This discretionary adder, that's what I'm talking about. So, but it's something that we can think about. But this, financial reserve that, CPC NH has, built up. So that's a portion of the rate. So even with their overhead and a portion of the rate that goes to financial reserves, they're still able to come in lower at 8.6 cents per kilowatt hour, as compared to the other utilities.
You're required to have a fund, so to take that.
No, that's our sort of our self-regulation. We have a policy that we adopted for ourselves that says we have, it's sort of common in any company who wants to have a financial reserve, but particularly in this energy business, you want to have a healthy reserve fund when you're in the commodity market. So anyway, that's a policy that we adopted as an organization. No. Have we used the reserve? No, and we don't intend to use it. We just intend to sort of have it, so we have good credit and we're a good counterparty in, you know, an unlikely or sort of last resort scenario. If we needed to draw down some of those funds to keep rates stable, we could do that. That's not really the main purpose, but it could be used.
Would that, and what is the, how much money is in that reserve fund now?
I think it's $8 or $9 million.
So $8 or $9 million they've accrued so far. And just to reiterate, so the plan that we would be voting on requires that we cannot launch unless the prices offered by CPC NH are lower than the other utilities. But that's only for launching. After that, that requirement will not be there. But CPC NH has consistently offered lower prices. Well, compared to New Hampshire Electric Co-op, it's just a fraction of a cent lower, you know, 8.6 cents, and NHEC has 8.648 cents. So it came in lower, but the thing is, most likely CPC NH will be equal to or less than the other utilities. And part of the reason why we know that they will be able to do that and keep stable prices is because of this financial reserve. Is that correct?
Yes. And also over time, right now we're building the reserve. So we're working to get up to our 60 days of cash and then 120 days of cash. Once we have reached that target, then we don't have to spend some of the rate on the reserve, and we don't have to take it out of the rate anymore. So.
And that's the other thing that I think is really helpful and beneficial about community power is that not just will we get most of the time lower rates, but we won't get this fluctuation, because with such, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but with such a reserve, the coalition, the CPC NH can absorb those volatile shocks, and is that correct?
Yes, it helps with rate stability. Yep.
Okay.
So are you saying the rates are stable between winter and summer, because typically they're higher in winter, so that's how the utility is charged? You know, the winter rate is higher than the summer rate. Is the, you know, CPC NH different than that?
Not necessarily as of right now. We're still working on building that reserve. And we are on the same rate setting schedule as the utilities. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're only buying for our sort of February through July rate period. We're setting a rate for that period, but we might buy some power that runs January through November for that period. So that would help us smooth out rates more so.
I thought that's what you were talking about, with hedging, you can buy the power for smaller blocks of time.
We may have bought, just as an example, 20% of the power required for late next year already. We bought maybe 100% of the power for January. Yeah.
But the rate to the customer is stable.
That's right.
If you're buying, as the gentleman said, a little bit on the spot market and all over, use the financial reserve to kind of buffer yourself, but a stable rate to the customer.
That's right.
So we're almost,
And I just add something to this, in terms of the reserve, that is always part of the discussion when we're setting rates. We say, okay, this is our target reserve. Maybe this time we're not going to take quite as much of the reserves because we're going to keep rates low. But that's part of the balancing that we do when we're setting rates. We're looking to what needs to go in reserve and can we keep rates low for the customer.
How long has the organization been around? It sounds like it's pretty new, actually.
Yeah, we were incorporated in October of 2021, so 3 years ago. But then we actually didn't launch power supply service until April of last year, so a year and a half ago.
Was Plainfield the first one? You were the first of Centennial?
The first wave, right?
First wave.
Wave one.
Very professional. Good job.
so we're almost at 8 o'clock. I just want to add something. Is anybody a NHEC customer here? Okay, just want to add, something that, we learned from Andrew Hatch, that NHEC manages to keep their prices pretty low, because they are cooperative and they do some of the price, monitoring, and so that's why they're able, and when the prices went way up a couple of years ago or last year, NHEC didn't go up as high. So what do I want to say? But NHEC has written a letter to CPC&H, haven't they? Saying that they encourage people to join. It does not harm does not harm NHEC for customers to buy their supply energy, not the delivery, but their supply energy from the CPC&H, and they encourage people, just so you know, because some NHEC customers, it's a good, actually the cooperative model is sort of what CPC&H is based on.
No, not exactly, but they're not regulated the same way as Eversource and Liberty, because they're not investor owned. So they have more flexibility in how they buy power, and their method is similar to us.
Well, there's still a decent percentage of the electric customers in town.
So I have one more question about town adders and how that process would work. So let's say Cornish comes in, they adopt some part of the program, they choose the basic rate, but a year from now they say, well, Plainfield's gone to the next rate up. So that would be one option, is to just increase the whole tariff rate to increase your purchase of RECs and commitment to renewables as the whole community. But another option would be the adder to say, you know what, rather than just purchasing RECs in the market, we want to do something right here in our own town. The adder is going to be for that purpose. Who are the people who make that decision? It doesn't go out to a vote, does it? It is a select board decision, both for whether to do the adder and then whatever that money might be used for, and then ultimately approving the use of that.
And I think some towns have gone ahead and done that with their select board, and some towns have said, you know, we'd rather have a town meeting. So, but I don't know that there's a legal requirement, or there's not a legal requirement for the town meeting to make that decision.
But it would default to the select board if they didn't choose to take it out to a whole town.
Yes, and we've actually discussed that, and the sense I get from the select board is that that type of decision would be something they would prefer to have the people vote on, rather than make a decision like that on their own, to add a tiny percentage, even to increase by a tiny percentage the rate. They would want the town to decide on that.
One question over the energy committee. You said if everything gets voted in, town meeting, then it's up to the select board to pick, community power or a broker. Why is the broker even an option?
Well, it's mainly in the plan because CPC&H is really bending over backwards to be forthcoming about all the options that towns have. So they included that in their template, and they want people to know that that's an option. Is that right?
I think so.
It's not exclusive, although it kind of is, because there's no other person. So. Let's hope we get the vote. I mean, and I guess we should tell our neighbors if they're not here tonight, you know, about this. if they're not-
Absolutely. Please spread the word.
Maybe we pass out, there's these little half card
Oh,
handouts. Yeah, you could, yeah, those things, pass those out.
Please take those and I think that's what Henry meant. Just give them, but, yes, the Energy Committee is going to be having one more information meeting. It won't be a public hearing. It's gonna be by Zoom, probably in February. We have to talk to various people to make sure, we don't know the date yet. But there will be that information meeting before town meeting.
Will you present at town meeting?
Yes, but we won't have this much time to go into it and this much time to answer everybody's questions. So that's why we really want people to be as informed as they can before town meeting, because we're not going to be able to go in this much depth at town meeting.
I think if you tell people you're gonna save money, that's positive.
I agree. So, Henry, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming out on, I hope the roads are better, safer. Thank you all for coming out here and do tell people about it, talk about it, visit the website, ask me questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much for doing this meeting. Appreciate it. Good night.